My parents picked my brother to run our family business instead of me, but he was later found guilty of laundering money. I've been helping my parents build their business for a few years now, and about 2 months ago, they decided to let their cute older son take over. I decided at that moment to cut ties with my family and leave the family business because, let's face it, my brother wasn't a good man, and I thought it was silly. I don't mean that he's bad because he was mean to me once, I mean that he is a thief. Not that my parents didn't know about this, they got it, but they decided not to care, whether he's a killer or not. Their oldest son would always get what he wanted. Male, I'm 26 years old, and my brother or sister is 30. Since we were kids, he had been rarely telling the truth. He regularly lied, cheated, and stole. Even worse, he wasn't very good at it. He got caught a lot, but our parents never really did anything about it. He would always be made right with, even after getting in trouble and being grounded for a few days. He finally understood that he could get away with it if he could charm our parents enough. But I could see right through it, and I didn't like him. We've always had a strong competition because I thought he was a bad guy and never tried to get along with him, and my parents thought I did the same. Wasn't nice. So they would make us spend time with them even though we both hated it. We finally went our separate ways to get our own jobs, and the holidays were the only time we could be together. A few months after I finished from high school, my parents told me that my brother had been fired from his job at the company where he had worked because of scam claims that were being looked into. Since I grew up with him, I wasn't at all surprised. Even as a youth, he had been showing signs for a long time that he was a juvenile criminal. He was on the run for a few months, but finally, I think with the help of my parents or something, the charges were dropped, and everything went back to normal. It was around 3 or 4 years ago, and from what I remember, my parents cut ties with him as a punishment for helping him out by giving him a lot of money to write off his business. I was so happy that my parents had finally done the right thing. At the time, I thought it was likely the first time they had ever done that. Pretty much at the same time, my dad told me I should start working for him and helping him with the family business. I had just lately gotten my degree. Since I was already looking for work, I thought that working for your family's business would be the best choice, so I agreed. Since then, it was my parents and I who worked hard to run the business and get experience so that I could could take over in the end. No one had brought it up because my dad wasn't ready to retire yet and didn't want to give up control of his business so fast. In my mind, though, I thought I would get everything when my dad retired. I was very sure of it because my brother wasn't in the picture at the time. He did, however, get in touch with my parents about 6 months ago and told them that he truly regretted everything and needed this second chance to prove that he had changed. He said that he had stopped doing drugs and been working legally for the past few years. However, my brother was eager to return home because he was tired of living outside of the city. He was putting in a lot of effort to convince people that he was now a real worker at a reputable company. But he would stay away from our family if my parents didn't want him to. I thought they should have just told him to stay away because he was the worst, but my parents didn't. They became kinder and chose to forgive him and welcome him back. I told my parents I didn't agree with the plan and that it wouldn't work. They then reminded me that everyone has the right to a second chance, which made me unable to answer. Also, our family business was doing really well, and I didn't want to make things harder for myself or my brothers by fighting with my parents. I really didn't have a choice but to get along with them. For one thing, I didn't live with him, so I wouldn't have to see him or see him very often. That made me happy, as long as it wasn't for work. My parents and he looked very happy with each other when he got back. At first, it looked like he had changed, especially when they had a party and our family got together, but I still couldn't believe him. Though I knew I should have gone with my gut and told my parents, I didn't want to spoil things for them. My brother and I didn't talk to each other for a few months. I did know, though, that he had been living with our parents since moving back to this area, which I thought was odd since he had been working for 3 or 4 years and should be able to support himself. His story that he had only come back and was living with his parents because he missed them so much and wanted to make up for didn't make sense to me. I was right to think that something wasn't quite right with what was going on. Still, my parents told me to stop seeing him because they thought I was being too suspicious and unsure, so I did. But I couldn't help but talk to my dad about it when he wanted to teach him things and take him to work 2 months ago. Afterward, my dad told me that he was getting ready to retire soon and was making plans for my brother to run the business after the training was over. After a few months of tests, my brother would start the papers. Although I had worked hard, I thought that my dad would leave the business to me if he retired soon. This news caught me off guard. That would be the right thing to do. But he told me that day that my older brother was the first person in line to receive the business. Even though he had never worked at the family business before, it didn't matter. My parents had talked to him about the chance of getting training after he finished, but he wasn't very interested in the idea. After talking to my mom that day, I got into a very angry fight with my dad. I realized she was also on his side. I tried to convince them of how stupid it was for them to give the business to a man who had been charged with theft before, and told them they would have to pay for his buyout. I told them it didn't matter because it was their son and everyone makes mistakes, so they were okay with it. They tried to make me feel better by telling me that my brother and I could both be in charge as business partners, but that has never worked out. It was clear to him that I didn't want anything to do with him, and that I would be leaving the company if he kept being involved in any way. The turning point for me was having him at work. It was already hard enough for me to deal with him being a family member and blood cousin. Finally, after a lot of back and forth, my parents decided to talk to him. Because I wanted to focus on other things, I decided to give up on my family and quit. This made me feel like you're a complete fool for having worked so hard on the family business for years. From then on, I've been looking for work for 2 months, but I'm not putting any stress on myself because I have enough money to get by for now. While working in the family business, I was making a good living, but all I could think about was the future and how I would deal with the fact that my parents would never be able to think straight again, and that my brother would get everything I had worked so hard for. I had even thought about suing the company because I had given them many years of my life, and they had no right to take it away from me. I didn't know what to do, though, because nothing had been confirmed in writing. Plus, they hadn't even asked me to go, and my dad was the owner and boss of the business, so he could do what he wanted. It turned out that fate never lets anything go unchecked for long, so I didn't have to do anything. Just 2 months after my parents initiated the process of handing over the business to him, my brother made news a few days ago, but I'm afraid there was no reason for it. Instead, it was because they had to find out that my brother was a thief. My parents were going to have to deal with the consequences for not trusting me when I always thought he was odd. It looks like the company he used to work for was just a front for moving money, and he and a few other people are now facing extra charges. Their whole group had been caught, which put him in a lot of trouble because the others had named him even though he hadn't talked to them in 2 months. This is all I know right now. Since I found out, friends and family have been texting me non-stop about it. Of course, for some reason my parents have been making passionate tries to get in touch with me. When I left the company 2 months ago, they stopped talking to me, but now they keep calling my phone. After not calling them for a few days, I finally decided this morning to give them another call and finally talk to them. I had a strong feeling that they would want me to come back and apologize for telling them about my brother so many times before. Because my parents are so nice, they started off on the wrong foot by telling me about my brother's issues. He was held until his trial, and it looks like the cops were looking into this at the same time. Because of his past, he kept saying he wasn't guilty and was innocent. He was cleared of any role in moving money and told that he had lost a lot of money trying to get away from them. I was right to think he was poor, which is why he hadn't moved out and was still living with our parents. But my parents didn't say sorry to me. Instead, they started to cry and told me how terrible everything had been for everyone, including my brother. They also asked me to do something to help them. Their pride and lack of knowledge made me laugh out loud at them. I told them I would only be helping the cops right now, because I was right the whole time. They didn't bother to listen to me, and they wanted to give their son another chance, since they did what they wanted to do. I was going to do what I wanted to do. After being shocked by how I was acting, they started telling me I was being unfair, and that this was my family. Because of this, I had to at least think about our image instead of purposely making things worse for my brother. In fact, they showed his business card and said that because he had been working closely with my parents for 2 months, they might look bad. Because of this, I felt compelled to help them, even if it was just for the sake of the family business. But I told them that they had already let me go because it was clear that they liked my brother more than me, no matter what kind of person my brother was. Everyone knows that there is always smoke without fire, but they still tended to believe his story of events and the things he said, not connected to it. Given his past, no one would trust him except our parents. What annoyed me the most about them was that they called me to ask for help instead of confessing their mistake. I was accused of being self-centered and told that my only worries were myself and my dislike of my brother, making it impossible for me to see the bigger picture. What was the point of telling my parents I wouldn't help them get my brother out of trouble, since the phone call went badly? Update 1: Okay, so I've decided to go against what my parents want me to do and follow my hobbies. Right now, I don't think they've ever shown me any care about my life. They have always put my brother ahead of me. It's only been in the last few years that they've been nicer to me since he hasn't been in touch with them. The only reason they were
whatsoever, besides a weak family connection. I don't have to support someone just because we are related, especially if I don't agree with what they do. Who are my parents to say I'm cocky because I didn't support him? They had done that, right? They chose to give the business to my brother because, among other things, he was older than me and wouldn't acknowledge the years of hard work I had put in. It wasn't because he was older than me, it was because they loved him as a son. Even if he was younger than me, they would have found a way for him to run the business. So, these claims that I'm greedy and other things don't bother me much. They are free to believe what they want. I'm done with my family, so I'm going to do what I want. I'm actually glad I quit the job because I've chosen to start my own business after giving it a lot of thought. Those things already, because I have the money and smarts to make a good business plan on my own. So I'm going to do that. And I really appreciate all the support I got in the comments. I think it was important for me to understand so I could stop questioning myself. Hello, I haven't talked to my parents in 7 days and 1 day, and since then, they were stopped by me. I was glad that neither they nor I knew what was going on with my brother. That way, they couldn't get in touch with me, even if they wanted to. The cops haven't called me yet, but I'm sure they will because I will have to speak in his favor or against him if the case goes to trial. In that case, I will happily speak against him because I think he should be jailed and dealt with properly. Because of how bad what he did was and how long he has been in jail, our parents can't just buy their way out of this time. In trying to avoid the consequences of his actions, I'd be happy to begin. Seeing him pay the price this time, though, the fact that they are still working hard to keep him safe shows that my parents care. A few hours before, they told me they wanted to buy me out before anyone else could come over. I hung out at home for a few days and was still there when they came by today. When I saw that they were my parents waiting outside, I told them to leave because I didn't know what to say to them. Also, I didn't want to talk to them because I knew they weren't going to say sorry, but of course they stayed put. They were just standing there, my dad told me, and their goal was to bargain with me. He went on to say that he had tried to convince me because he knew I wasn't an emotional person. They called me emotional and told me to protect my family, but I didn't understand what they meant. He had no other choice but to offer me money to keep quiet about my brother when it was time for him to witness. I was shocked when he said he was trying to buy me out and convince me to come back. It made no sense to me. After that, he made things worse by saying he was ready to give me any amount I wanted. It was enough for me to keep quiet and not say anything bad about him. It would mean a lot to the family because having one brother speak against another brother and try to get him jailed was not a good look for anyone. He kept talking and talking, and after I got over being shocked at first, he knew I wasn't going to take any money from him and that he had to leave because I was going to call the cops if he didn't. He made things worse for my brother and himself. It was then that my mom yelled at me, calling me arrogant and saying she never thought I would act this way. She went on to say that she didn't think my dad and her had raised me to be so selfish and self-centered and act like I didn't care about my family. At that point, I had had enough, and I opened the door to face them because I was interested in what they thought they were talking about. Most of what I know about life I learned from them, and they helped me become the person I am today. Since they didn't seem to mind that my brother was selfish and self-centered. They taught me that behavior was okay, so why was it wrong when I did it? He had gotten a lot of pleasure from being a bad person all his life. No one in our family seemed to mind. Even now, they were still acting the same way. Then I told them that after my brother came back, they were happy to let me leave the company 2 months earlier because they didn't think I was important enough to keep working there. Now, though, they needed my help because he was having trouble. That's not how it works, unfortunately. At that time, they didn't know that I was related to them and that this isn't how you treat family. They want me to act like our family has always been nice, though, because it suits them. Most of the time, I don't lose my cool, but I was so mad that I was crying out loud at them. And both of them looked shocked. I try not to yell at people even when I have to, because it makes me tired, but I was so mad that I had no choice. I just yelled at them until my voice got rough. Then I told them I wanted them to leave and never come back because if they did, I would call the cops and make things worse for them. Now they seem to finally get it, because they left me alone after that. I'm not sure if they will come back if they do. It's time for me to call the cops because I don't want to deal with this again. I kind of got the peace I needed today, but it wasn't worth the mental pain it caused me. I don't like getting other people or using energy. Third update, the hearing for my brother's case is set for next week. My parents and I haven't talked in a while, and I haven't kept in touch with them either. I couldn't find out the details of what was going on with my brother because of this, and to be honest, I didn't want to. I had only been working on making a business plan and looking for possible backers for the past few weeks. I didn't want to spend all of my own money, so I think I could do well even without partners. I've been telling one of my uncles about my goals because I know he is pretty wealthy and I would like to have his support. He was the one who first told me about my brother, which was kind of shocking. I didn't talk to him about it any further. Almost everyone in the family knows that my relationship with my parents has gotten worse, and some have even taken sides. My uncle had been talking to me, even though he is my dad's brother. If about the business plan and tells me about my brother, stands by me and has stopped talking to him because of how he treats me. Because he talked a lot. Everyone in the family now knows that I told him that my parents tried to buy me out so I wouldn't testify against my brother. People who say they are with my parents are actually pretty skeptical about the whole thing. If my brother is really innocent, then why would they want to buy me out? That is exactly the kind of thing someone who is guilty would try to do. This means that they can hide anything they've done. My whole family has been coming up to me to talk about my parents and brother and ask me questions, but I haven't said anything about anything yet. I don't want to spread rumors and become something my family talks about. I'm not going to say anything else until the law says I have to. That will happen if I have to witness against my brother. That's not something I can see. I'm looking forward to it. I will do what needs to be done when the time comes, even though I know it will be very hard on my emotions. They haven't called me yet. But if the trial is about to start, I'm sure you'll get in touch with me at some point, and I'm ready for that. Version 4. Hello everyone, men. My brother was put on trial a long time ago, and the verdict was made public this week. He will be going to jail. It's been a long time, but I hope my parents have learned their lesson. I won't say I'm glad they did what they did though. Think about it. A lot of my family members have told me how mad they are and how unfair his jail is. All I can say is that he has pretty much ruined their lives. I've heard they've been writing about this on their blog because they still think he is innocent. The court found him guilty, but my parents are not ready to accept that. I know they haven't been working on the business because they've been too busy protecting my brother, which makes things even worse. A lot of people have given up and lost a lot of money. As a result, I think they might have to close soon. That was scary. I'm glad I left, because I might have had to go through all of that. They tried to buy me out, and that was the last time we talked. I did run into them when I was called to witness against my brother, though. As stated, I did make a case against him. There were signs that they were all angry about it, but they didn't say anything. Which was good for me because I wouldn't have appreciated it otherwise. My parents are still denying that my brother is a bad person, and now he has to deal with the consequences of his actions. Almost the whole family is turned against them, and they have only themselves to blame. They are always begging for justice on social media, but the truth is that it has already been done. They will keep living in ignorance because they can't handle the truth. Now it doesn't matter much to me, so good for them. I need to take care of my own job. Along with my own money, my uncle and a few of his friends invested in my business 2 months ago, which allowed it to get off the ground. We need a break, but so far everything has gone well. Being able to do this also makes me feel very proud of myself, because I've always wanted to run my own business, and I still have a lot of time because I'm young. I can turn this into an empire and reach all of my youth dreams. I really want to reach all the objectives I have set for myself. The reason they were nicer to me was because they thought they wouldn't have anyone to take over the business when my dad left. It doesn't matter to me why they did what they did, because now that my brother is back, I can see the difference in how they act and remember how they treated us differently when we were kids. It was silly of me to think otherwise, and now nothing has changed. They haven't even told me they're sorry, and they're making me look bad for not wanting to help my guilty brother. If he had been a nice person, or at least polite to me in the 2 months since he got back, I might have even given him the benefit of the doubt. But that hasn't happened. Our relationship stayed tight, and when he came back, we barely talked to each other. So why should I try to help someone I don't know?